if you really want to make money on altcoins and you don't just want to go the Bitcoin maxi route, all you have to do is you can just hold Bitcoin until there is a parabolic Bitcoin rally that then leads the social risk much higher. And then when you see the social risk going up, I'm not saying you go buy altcoins with US dollars, because by that point the alts will be off their lows, but they're probably at new lows against Bitcoin, because during these parabolic Bitcoin rallies, usually altcoins go to new lows on their Bitcoin pairs.
Bitcoin has been, to put it lightly, stuck in traffic on struggle street. Price action has slowed, momentum has faded, and the market feels directionless. For many investors, this environment is uncomfortable, not because of sharp crashes or euphoric rallies, but because of apathy. And ironically, that may be exactly what makes this period so important. In this video, we're going to break down Ben Cowen's thesis on why Bitcoin's current market structure looks far more like 2019 than 2021 or 2022, why an apathetic top can still be a legitimate cycle top, and why waiting endlessly for an alt season may be one of the most expensive mistakes retail investors continue to make.
Bitcoin has been, to put it lightly, stuck in traffic on Struggle Street for a while now. Now, a lot of times when you form these tops, whether you want to make the comparison to 2022, or I actually kind of prefer the 2019 comparison, if I'm being honest, and one of the reasons why I like that comparison is it just seems to match a lot closer, like this bear market with the one in 2019. The other reason is because when you top on apathy rather than euphoria, you don't have like the same type of selling pressure. There is still selling pressure today like there was back in 2019, but when you're not topping on euphoria, you don't have all these fresh retail investors that are panic selling on the way down. You basically just have people that are selling that probably bought about a year ago, and now they're like, oh, well, the price today is about where it was a year ago, maybe even a little bit lower. Therefore, it's called time-based capitulation, right? Like they just don't want to sit around and wait any longer for it to go up, especially while they watch other assets go up in other asset classes. So whether you look at it in 2019 or you look at it in 2021, there's often like a 2.5 month to maybe 4 month window where the sort of the first batch of sellers are being convinced that it's a bear market, right? So you first have kind of the people that get it right away when you see the top occur, and you're looking over here at the ROI from the low, and you're like, all right, I mean, this cycle lasted basically the same length of the last two cycles, therefore we need to start considering that as the cycle top. So that's kind of like the first batch of people that start to sell. They're like, what if this time is not different? As much as people want it to be different, you're never going to escape the fact that the 4-year cycle has remained intact for a long time. Now, I mean, I do think it'll eventually break, but the reality is, as long as you, if you continue to think that it's going to be correct, you're more often right than wrong, right? So at some point you'll be wrong, and maybe that's this time, but for so long, you'll just be more right than wrong when going with the 4-year cycle. And again, Bitcoin does not have a monopoly on the 4-year cycle. We've seen 4-year cycles exist well before Bitcoin was created. So this is kind of like your first batch of people that you convince, and then they start selling, right? And this was kind of like what happened in 2019, where Bitcoin topped right before quantitative tightening ended as well. So unfortunately, Bitcoin has coal in its stocking for Christmas of 2025. And the reason, arguably, is because, well, when the Fed ended quantitative tightening last cycle, they ended it in August, the balance sheet started to go up in September. You can see that Bitcoin topped out 2 to 3 months before the balance sheet started to go up, and then it just continued to drop. You could argue that the same thing has been happening now, right? Like Bitcoin topped potentially 2 to 3 months before the balance sheet started to go up. And as it continues to drop, there's a lot of people out there screaming that that can't be the top because they didn't have an alt season, right? And it's kind of like a strange view to say that like Bitcoin owes you something because some random micro cap that you shilled didn't rally, Like, that's nonsensical. And that's what leads to a lot of people getting wrecked, because they think that Bitcoin has to do something specific just so that their altcoin gets bailed out. But the reality is that in 2019, when we topped on apathy, there was no rotation into altcoins, right? There was no rotation. Now, were there some alts that put in a new all-time high? Absolutely, right? I mean, absolutely. But that's been the case every year for the last few years. Will there be an altcoin that puts in an all-time high in 2026? Probably. But you can't cherry pick like one or two different cryptocurrencies to then make that to be a commentary about the whole asset class. The reality is that there is not a growing interest right now in crypto, right? You can see that preceding the 2017 alt season and the 2021 alt season, we had higher lows and higher highs in social interest, but we're not seeing that at all right now. Like, we're not seeing that at all. And so on one hand, you have a lot of people sort of looking at the chart and they're like, all right, well, the cycle has to continue because we haven't had that, right? That's kind of what they think. But remember, there was no rotation after the 2019 top. In fact, what caused the eventual rotation into alts that didn't, by the way, happen until a year and a half later, when alt Bitcoin pairs finally bottomed in December of 2020, January 2021, it was after there was a reason for the Fed to become a lot more dovish, but that didn't happen until the stock market started to show a lot of weakness. So this is the thing about altcoins and Bitcoin, is that you don't have to spend years of your life like holding alts that are just bleeding every day against the US dollar and against Bitcoin. You don't have to do that. If you really want to make money on altcoins and you don't just want to go the Bitcoin maxi route, all you have to do is you can just hold Bitcoin until there is a parabolic Bitcoin rally that then leads the social risk much higher. And then when you see the social risk going up, I'm not saying you go buy altcoins with US dollars, because by that point the alts will be off their lows, but they're probably at new lows against Bitcoin, because during these parabolic Bitcoin rallies, usually altcoins go to new lows on their Bitcoin pairs.
One of the most common arguments against the idea that Bitcoin may have already topped is the claim that an alt season has not yet happened. Many investors believe Bitcoin cannot peak unless there is a massive rotation into altcoins first. Ben Cowen strongly disagrees with this view and argues that it is one of the most misleading narratives in crypto. Bitcoin does not owe anyone an alt season. It does not exist to rescue underperforming altcoins or to follow a script designed to guarantee profits. The belief that Bitcoin must keep going up simply because certain altcoins have not rallied is driven by hope, not by market structure or liquidity. History supports this view. In 2019, Bitcoin topped on apathy rather than euphoria, and there was no broad altcoin rotation afterward. While a few altcoins performed well, the overall market continued to bleed. Cherry-picking winners does not equal an alt season.
So this is what I've tried to warn people about for a while, is that you don't have to just sit around hoping that some guru on Twitter is right about an alt season, when just simply holding Bitcoin this cycle and holding the majority of your portfolio in that was clearly the way to go. If the top is in for a while, which is what I think, there is no rotation into alts, because there wasn't after the 2019 top, and there's a lot of similarities between this top and the 2019 top. There's no rotation. So I think some people think, well, if the top is in, there'll still be this massive rotation. That's not necessarily true. Could you have some alts go to new all-time highs? Again, absolutely, but you're not going to have that same massive rotation that a lot of people are thinking, right? If you have a counter trend rally to a lower high by Bitcoin, yes, some things could go higher, but do not mistake that for an alt season. The rally that people would need to sort of justify an alt season would be a parabolic rally like this, but that can't really occur so long as the stock market continues to hold up way up here, right? So The problem, though, is that if the stock market were to drop, crypto would also likely go lower, thus making it seem like there's not really a great reason to hold altcoins, because like the only way they're going to durably rally is for the markets to go down first, to then justify the money printing, to then justify the rate cuts. That's exactly how this played out in 2019, right? So I just want to caution people, because there are these like sort of like these pervasive narratives that alts are always like just around the corner from rallying. But the reality is that in 2019, a lot of the altcoins that bled out did not actually participate in the next rally, right? So that's the hard part about an alt season, is that when it actually occurs, a lot of the alts that participate in that alt season are new altcoins that were just created, not altcoins that have been around for the last few years, because they have all the baggage of all the holders that have been watching them bleed out. And so anytime they rally at all, the people then take that as an opportunity to sell them. So don't make those mistakes. It's easy to take the guy's side that's been shilling alt season for years. It's easy to take his side, but the reality is when you look at alt Bitcoin pairs, they have done nothing but bleed for years and years and years. And when alt Bitcoin pairs came down to the range lows last cycle, you still didn't get an alt season right away, right? It took another year and a half. So if you're using altcoins to make some type of justification about price action for Bitcoin, I think you're going to be disappointed. You have to look at Bitcoin in this case, I think, by itself, right? You can't say that like, oh, the altcoin market is going to have this crazy effect on Bitcoin right now. Could you have said that altcoins were bullish for Bitcoin when alt Bitcoin pairs were higher? There's liquidity there. But as the years go on, there's just less and less liquidity that's actually even hanging out on the altcoin market, because just the liquidity is getting spread thinner and thinner and thinner. So when I look at this chart and I look at, all right, where is Bitcoin? And you have one camp saying that it can't be the top because it was an apathetic top. I'm saying it's an apathetic top and it can also be the top for a while. That doesn't mean there will never be a new all-time high for Bitcoin. Like, I absolutely think there will. But it's going to take a while. Like, it's probably going to take a while. You know, last time, I mean, obviously we had the pandemic drop, but you could argue that almost just accelerated it. Last time, after the 2019 top, it actually took about a year and a half to break above that high, right? It took a year and a half. And even if you ignored the pandemic drop, it still was at 2/3 of a year, and we still hadn't broken back above it, even after 2/3 of a year. So if you think about that, 230 days from the top would still put us, you know, in May of 2026. And the suggestion, you know, following 2019 would be that it still would not have taken out the October high. Okay, so, you know, it's easy to just kind of kick the can down the road on alt season and be like, all right, well, it'll happen eventually, and just kind of ignore all the wrong cause before. But again, that's not a great way to invest. Like, that's more of a casino. That's not a great way to invest. And you have to have like a kind of, you have to figure out, like, are you here to invest, or are you just here to gamble?
At the end of the day, the question isn't whether Bitcoin will ever make a new all-time high again. It almost certainly will. The real question is this: are you here to invest, or are you here to gamble? Chasing alt-season narratives, ignoring liquidity conditions, and assuming Bitcoin must follow a script is not investing. It's speculation. Ben Cowen's message is not bearish. It's disciplined. It's about probability, not promises. And in markets, discipline always outlasts hype.